This is the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is our spotlight. We actually have 3 this week. Over to you, Ms. Keys.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our spotlight section of our agenda for Tuesday, May 2nd. And as Mr. Lyons just mentioned, we have many spotlights to cover tonight. First off is we have Tracy Elementary School Lunchroom Initiative. I have to say, back in August, I went to visit Tracy and actually looked at their space, and I really looked at the round table design and having teachers involved, sitting with students, conversing, talking about their weekends, really getting to know students on a one-to-one basis. So I spoke to Brenda a while back, and we thought, let's just have them in for one of our spotlights and honor them. So tonight, the Board of Ed recognizes teachers and staff at Tracy Elementary School for their leadership in finding new ways to build relationships and to connect with their students on a one-to-one basis. Tracy has spent the school year adapting a new character education model. Principal Teresa Rangel and staff members visited Hartford's Breakthrough Academy several times to view key features of their program and how they have changed the culture and climate in their own building. Several initiatives were already in place at Tracy, such as community meetings every week, but the entire Tracy team decided to add an element to the school that had made an important difference this year: family-style lunches, in which it's now called the Cubs Cafe. Tracy teachers now join their students in the cafeteria. Kindergarten classes do the same in their own classrooms. The result has been a lunchtime that is more family-oriented. Students talk with teachers about what they do on the weekend, giving staff a unique opportunity to build relationships and better understand students. Students also get the chance to know their teachers on a more personal level as well, so it kind of goes hand in hand. As part of their school climate initiative, the district gave the cafeteria a fresh coat of paint. Tracy parents then added colorful accents. Students are in the process of painting large canvases that will be hung to decorate the cafe. The artwork will spell out and represent PRINT, P-R-I-N-T, which stands for Elements in the Tracy Character Program: problem solving, respect, integrity, neighborly, and taking responsibility for yourself. Print is also an important part of the Tracy Pledge. Tracy Cubs strive to be safe, be respectful, be responsible as they leave their print on the world, because good character looks the same in all different languages. Teachers, as they sit with students at lunches and having their familiar figures monitor student behavior, has proven to be a real game changer at Tracy. Referrals to the office from the lunchroom are down to near zero. With teachers sitting among the students, things can be handled immediately at that time when something difficult comes up. Teachers have been able to learn about things that might be worrying a child, and that gives Tracy the unique opportunity to address a behavior or a concern right when it happens, and actually before it becomes a problem. The Board of Education tonight is pleased and proud to recognize Principal Teresa Rangel. We also have the Culture and Climate team at Tracy who have worked to roll this out, and the entire Tracy staff community for their support. And I see a lot of blue and white out here, so congratulations so much. I think it's an amazing opportunity for the students as well as the staff. I have certificates of excellence, but they're more of just a certificate to let you know how much we appreciate everything that you've done. So I'm going to call your names up if you wouldn't mind coming up and just coming say hi to the board, and I have a certificate for you. First person, actually I have Lisa Kaplan. We don't have a certificate, but I want to honor you tonight, and I'll make sure that we get it to you. So if we can congratulate Lisa Kaplan. Yeah, I like that.
Congratulations.
That's a good thing.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I give you a certificate? Thank you so much. Oh, thanks.
There's always one. At least one goes every time.
I think we're just doing a new ritual, coming around this way, just something different. Next, we have our principal, Teresa Rangel. Teresa can come up. It does.
We're flexible.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good job, Teresa.
Congratulations. I'm proud of you.
Stefan Steiner.
Congratulations.
I like it. Good work.
Good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Stephanie. All right.
Sharon O'Hara.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Good job, Sharon.
Carla Monterio.
Congratulations.
Carla, thank you so much. Oh, thank you.
Good job.
Congratulations.
Rontisha Michael.
Congratulations.
Good job, Ron.
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Good work. Good job.
Next up, we have Rob McCowan.
Congratulations. Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Nice work. Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Thank you. Thank you. Good work. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Next up is Debbie LeDuc. She not here tonight? Okay, we'll make sure. Teresa, I'll give you the extra certificate you could bring back. All right. Jill Katakman.
Congratulations, Kelly.
Good job. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
Congratulations.
Rosemary Holenkoff.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rosemary, how are you? Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
My favorite subject.
Congratulations, Rosemary.
Thank you.
Celia Hall. Not here tonight? Well, thank you. You could just give me a nod like this and I'll know. Amanda Hall.
Congratulations.
Well done, Amanda.
Congratulations, Amanda. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Great job.
Congratulations, Amanda.
Kevin Downing.
Congratulations. Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Nice work.
Congratulations. Good job.
Nick Danielle.
Switching it up.
I like it.
Thank you. Well done.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thanks.
Last up is Kim Bonadio. Thank you to the whole Tracy community tonight. Yep.
She's going to bring out those extra certificates. It's my personal thanks also to all of you for coming out and wearing your school regalia, and it's great to see local initiatives like this where you guys came up with a great idea on your own and made it happen. Thank you very much from the board. All right, Heidi, over to you.
I am. We have another spotlight, 2 more to go. Exciting night tonight in Norwalk. We're really appreciative of everybody coming out tonight. Teacher Appreciation Week. It's for May 8th through May 12th. The Norwalk Board of Education tonight is very proud to recognize the week of May 8th, 2017 as Teacher Appreciation Week in Norwalk. As we all strive towards our vision of making Norwalk the most successful city school in Norwalk, our teachers, or in Connecticut, our teachers are working every single day to make sure all students are college and career ready. They hold students to high expectations, challenge them all to think critically, push them to excel in the face of obstacles, and guide their development into contributing citizens. They encourage Norwalk students to display creativity as well as imagination, and they help develop a strong passion for learning that will last an entire lifetime. Teachers, as we all know, are the most influential factor in a child's educational experience. Norwalk Public Schools has more than 900 certified teachers who have dedicated their lives and their careers to making sure all of our children succeed and are successful. They are entrusted with the education and intellectual development of our children, but they also fill many other roles as well. They are role models, they motivate, they're mentors. Norwalk teachers continue to influence their students long after they graduated. I think all of us, even on the board and the audience, we know wonderful teachers and we remember our teachers. I have a son now who's at UConn who still talks about his elementary school teachers. So you all have a true impact in their lives well past their school years. By recognizing Teacher Appreciation Week, the Norwalk Board of Ed joins with students, families, as well as members of the community in recognizing our talented, committed, tireless, and inspirational teachers. We are all grateful for the work that they do, all of you do tonight. We encourage you tomorrow to take a moment and thank your teacher, and we thank all of the teachers out here tonight. And we have one more.
One more.
School Nurse Appreciation Day, which is for May 10th, 2017. The Norwalk Board of Ed is pleased to recognize May 10th, 2017 as School Nurse Appreciation Day. Norwalk school nurses are health professionals who juggle a complex array of medical as well as social issues. Their work goes well beyond playground scrapes and upset stomachs. For a school nurse, no 2 days are exactly alike, and each day brings a new set of challenges. A typical schedule may be screenings for health issues, administering medication, responding to allergic reactions, as well as accidents. Helping students manage diseases such as diabetes and asthma, and addressing the impact of mental, emotional, as well as social issues. In addition to working with students, they also may interact with other professionals, including teachers, administrators, doctors, counselors, coaches, social workers, parents, and many more. The school nurses of Norwalk Public Schools are caring. They're also committed to our students. By recognizing May 10th, 2017 as School Nurse Appreciation Day, the Board of Ed joins with our schools, families, and our community in recognizing these dedicated and hardworking professionals. Thank you again for everybody that came. We do appreciate all that you do for our students.
All right, so we're going to go out now to the workshop session. Those of you who have attended, you're certainly welcome to remain. You do not have to. We've recognized you, and we know you worked all day and you want to get home and relax a little bit. You've earned it.
Thank you.
All right, so we will now move on to item 4, which is update on leadership development program with Dr. Costanzo. Frank, over to you.
Good evening, board members. So The leadership development work that our cabinet and administrators set out to do a couple of years ago has been a real core element in the reform work that we've done in Norwalk. In our strategic operating plan, you will see that one of the core plans for our SOP was to develop the people that we have, and to do that through the development of teachers and school leaders, so that when vacancies occur across the district, we can fill a majority of those positions through our own people. That is key in the development and the continued improvement of any school district, particularly one that is of our size, 20. Last year in the operations office, working with Patty Foley and others, we developed a theory of action statement. And if you remember the board retreat, our first board retreat a couple of years ago, we placed an emphasis on the research around developing hypothesis statements, that if you set out to do certain things, then it will result in results, and you can disqualify whether those results actually happen or not. And so you can see on the PowerPoint that we believe that if we develop exemplary teachers and school leaders by way of designing and implementing leadership training programs, focusing on our highest talent employees, then a majority of our positions in the district that become openings can happen through the selection of our own. Growing our own, having a deep bench, I've said before, is critical to the sustainability of any improvement work that happens across a district. This graphic should be familiar to you, and I can speak very briefly about where we are in terms of the leadership ladder. But we've accomplished most of what we set out to do in terms of designing a district-wide structure for individual employees to grow one step at a time, starting with our Emerging Leader Program. And that is designed to take our most talented, most ambitious classroom teachers and provide them with some of the basic foundational leadership and organization-based training and research, and to do that over the course of a year. It's a pretty sophisticated program. There's a financial commitment, obviously, on the district's part, and I'll speak a little bit more later about the numbers that we have put through the program in year one and how we have done so far in recruiting a second cohort. Emerging Leader Program grows into this High Potential Leader Fellowship Program, and that is designed more or less for new administrators and those that we believe have the highest potential to become principals at some point in their careers in Norwalk. Ideally, and over time, the goal is that we have a number of employees growing through this program, through steps. We had one example of that from last year to this year. He's sitting in the front row, Rob Pennington, an emerging leader last year, selected for the Emerging Leader Program through the early phases. We made him a CISD, and in a moment I will introduce him and his new Cohort II members who will be participating in the Principal Fellowship program for the Norwalk Public Schools. So he is one example of someone that has gone through the first two rungs of this 4-rung process. The Aspiring Principal Residency Program is still in our concept phase, and that is primarily due to budget limitations that we understand prevent us from being able to pay a full salary for someone to do a full-year residency outside of their administrative role. That would be a significant cost, and we understand that in these times it's not practical to do, but that in better times a residency program of some kind could be very helpful in the build-out of this pipeline. And then lastly, we have the new principal development program. This year we had 6 principals, either first year or second year principals to their schools, or a principal that was leading a turnaround school or one that the district identified as a lower performing school. I'm going to get into the details of each of these programs, but that is the framework and the structure that we have laid out and followed for the most part over the past 2 years. Here are some year-to-date progress points that I think are important for the board to hear. First, the district is graduating its first cohorts in the following areas: the emerging leaders, the relay principal fellows, the Connecticut lead, new turnaround principals. In total, if we go to the bottom point, we have 22 Norwalk Public Schools educators that have undergone extensive leadership development over the course of this year. That would not be the case had we not invested in this and designed the structures and systems to build this out in the way that we did. 2 relay fellows that were selected last year were made principals very early, very late in the spring, early summer. So what we are also seeing is not just this robust set of structures and systems for learning, but we're seeing it translate into actual results where folks that are going through the program that are our own are moving into very important positions, such as, in this case, 2 elementary principals. As I mentioned a moment ago, 1 emerging leader was appointed a CISD and is now moving into the second rung of the leadership pipeline. If you take a look back to some of the earlier presentations that the district has done around NWE assessment, you'll see that the Connecticut LEAD program and the principals involved in that have really contributed to the growth that we've seen from our baseline MAP assessments to our mid-year assessments. And we should not forget about the teachers who have been a part of this process. It is not enough to develop only our administrators in the district. In fact, it's you can argue more important to develop classroom teachers and to think of their role in the district and in their schools as one that is much more than just having an impact on the 20 or so, 25 classroom students that they have. And last year, we had a cohort of 11 teachers who were identified by their principals and went through a very rigorous application process through the New Leaders Consultancy Group. And I'll get into a little bit more of what they did over the course of this year. So that's the progress we've made, and I want to talk now about the next steps for each of these areas. The first, the emerging leaders. Again, this is our high potential teacher group. We wish we had more administrator vacancies to be able to move more of our people, but we can do what we can do, and we can rethink existing roles that are within the NFT. But the application season is coming to an end for the emerging leaders cohort. We have a second cohort of 9 at this point. 9 Norwalk Public School teachers have matriculated into this cohort. The remaining step is for me to reach out to the principals of those teachers of those schools and just verify, because New Leaders has done their application screening process. It's extensive, and I want to verify through the principals at each school that this is indeed somebody that we want to back and fund over the course of the next year. As with the first cohort that's completing their work this year, in fact, they will be presenting their end-of-year exhibitions on May 23rd and May 25th here at City Hall if you have any interest in observing some of their final products. They'll undergo a multi-day summer intensive, 7 4 to 6 hour training sessions over the course of the year. And I won't read these, but you can see the importance of the core areas that classroom teachers are receiving. So in Norwalk, we have classroom teachers who are learning how to coach other teachers, how to set SMART goals, how to initiate difficult conversations, how to lead data team meetings, and engage others in the responsibility to build and share leadership. And teachers in other schools and other districts don't often get the opportunity to learn how to do those things. They're resigned to their siloed roles in their classrooms. They see their kids And for so many teachers across the country, they go the day and they don't interact with another adult. And we want to do much more than that, obviously. So you can see that those sessions they look very much like what an organization and leadership degree would look like at a school. And I'm proud that we have another group of 9 or 10 teachers that will be undergoing this type of important development. And then lastly, you can see each of these emerging leaders, these classroom teachers, receive ongoing coaching, support, and development opportunities. The coaching is differentiated. New leaders approaches our adult learners in the same way we ask our teachers to approach our students. We learn differently. We grow differently. And what is probably most profound about this program is that it is not something that is placed in a binder and placed on a shelf and is disconnected from the work that our school people are doing on a daily basis. The New Leaders Group, makes it a point to connect with the curriculum and the assessments and the organizational structure of each emerging leader, and basically tailors the program so that their tasks, their assignments through the seminar over the course of the year are job embedded. And they have opportunities to lead data team meetings, build the capacity of their grade level teams or their department team. So we've been very impressed with this process. Our high potential leaders, that application process has closed. I'd like to ask the 5 Cohort II members to please rise. And allow me to just quickly introduce you. Jackie Ahrens, a Norwalk born and bred resident, went to Norwalk High School and is currently a housemaster. Deborah Bell Johnson, Nathan Hale Middle School, has been the middle school principal at Nathan Hale for 15 years. I'm sorry, assistant principal. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sarah Carmody, right now, stepping up and splitting the duties at 2 elementary schools, .5 assistant principal at Jefferson and .5 at Kendall. Everybody knows Rob Pennington, currently a CISD at Brookside and formerly a social studies lead teacher at Rowton. And then lastly, Shannon Roman, CISD at Merrimack, working closely with Jane Wilkins. Thank you. As part of the application process, we believed it was important for our current cohort, our 5 current members who are finishing up the process, to be part of the application and interview process. And so the 5 that you see standing before you today completed a written application and extensive essay. They were required to observe a current fellow at a school in Norwalk, do an observation of a teacher, and then a debrief session with that teacher, and then reflect on what they saw this Cohort 1 member doing well, not so well, et cetera. So each of them went through that process. And then finally, they sat for a 45-minute interview with at least 1 or 2 operation members, as well as a sitting cohort member. And so the interviews were pretty dynamic. We allowed the candidates to ask questions at one point in the process. And those Relay Cohort 1 members, I think, gave you a good indication of what you have in store for you. It is a pretty intense program. They will depart Norwalk for Denver, Colorado on June 19th. They'll remain there through the 30th. They will live, eat, breathe, observation, feedback, data-driven leadership, and school culture building. And they will meet and work with some of the best school administrators across the country from both public schools, charter schools, and independent schools, and learn about how to do this well and hopefully return it to Norwalk. As I said, the program has really 3 core areas: instructional, leadership, observation, and feedback. A real heavy emphasis on data-driven instruction and leading adults through the complicated mess of figuring out what the numbers mean and how to make that actually impact classroom instruction. And then lastly, and a big piece of our strategic operating plan is this, how we have emphasized the culture of our buildings and wanting to continually improve that. I should note before moving on to the next piece that 3 of our new fellows will join their principal or another colleague at their school who are graduates of Cohort I. And I highlight that because we often talk about scale and sustainability, but that's how it actually plays out when a place like Norwalk High School now has 3 housemasters that will be trained in the very latest. At Merrimack, we will have a principal in CISD that can speak the same language, and the same at Brookside. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have reached out to the Connecticut State Department around the continuation of the Connecticut Lead Turnaround Principal Coaching Model. As I said earlier, we had that in place for 6 Norwalk principals this year. Each have found it to be valuable. It did not cost the district anything other than giving up some time for principals to be able to have a regular mentor and coach who would come to the district, to do some visits at schools across the state, and to participate in a monthly seminar. We are awaiting more details. The last I was told was that there would be a program, but they didn't have much in the way of details in terms of whether they could replicate the commitment that they made this year. They have a somewhat similar model. They spend a 2-week intensive in Cheshire, focused on core turnaround leadership competencies, how to take a building and essentially redesign it from the bottom up. And what the program has become really is not just a turnaround principal program, but also one for new principals. Most new principals are dropped in schools that need significant change and improvement. Following the Summer Institute, there is a 3-month entry plan that the principals develop. And our principals are finishing up their experience, their cohort experience. Later this month, Patty Foley, Director of School Improvement, and I will be commuting up to Cheshire, I believe, to see those end-of-year projects by our 6 principals. And so that wraps up the update and the future of the leadership pipeline. We really believe in it. We think that it's making a difference in what our classroom teachers and school leaders are going to be able to do in the future in Norwalk.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Mike?
2 questions, Frank. One, the 3 late fellows that were made principals, I'm assuming one of those is Teresa?
One of those is Jane Wilkins,
Oh, right.
and one is Sandra Feos.
Oh,
But Teresa Rangel, as a newer principal in her 2nd year at Tracy, was selected for the Connecticut Lead Program. And so she was assigned to coach. She participated in the 2-week summer seminar, and she has been meeting in a monthly seminar, doing observations at other schools, and also having her coach come in and take a look at the work that's happening there.
And then my second question is with respect to curriculum, or this seems very, management-oriented. Is there a curriculum aspect to this as well, to look at different curriculums and to appreciate the results from different curriculums and to have, how to analyze and evaluate?
I think that's where the focus is in terms of curriculum. So it isn't necessarily writing or selecting curriculum, but it is understanding how to have a discerning eye around how that curriculum should be implemented in a classroom, and then how to provide useful feedback to the practitioner so that there is an improvement in future observations and future curriculum implementation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Comments. Thanks, Frank.
Ryan?
Good work.
Thank you.
Can I just add a comment? I think it's a great program. I mean, you could see how we were able to move up many of our teachers and administrators to the next level, and I think promoting from within is really important. I mean, I think you're all in the trenches, and then you know your students, you know your teachers, you know your staff, and I think continuing to move up that line, I think is great. I think it shows your classes, or not your classes, but your school, how you're able to move up. And I think it inspires others to do the same.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Good report, Frank.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, and congratulations to our new Relay Fellows. It's very gratifying that 2 years into this now, at the end of the summer, we will achieve our aspiration of being able to fill all our principal vacancies from within with highly qualified people. So I want to thank the board for their support of this effort, and all the people who stepped up in order to do more and make our schools better. Going to talk about budget reconciliation tonight. I'm going to ask Tom Hamilton to come up to the podium and help me with this a little. But before we get into the meat of it, let me just give you or remind you of the context and events that brought us to this point. You'll recall that the budget that I recommended to you and you ultimately recommended to the city was at a 5.2% increase, exclusive of any additional costs relative to medical insurance. And there were several important aspects of that budget necessary to implement the strategic operating plan, namely the funding for the high schools to reduce study halls, and reach the same level as middle school funding, the magnet program funding that enables our magnet schools to offer real and robust programs, and further reordering of our state grants to make them compliant, and also to make money available to expand summer learning. You'll recall that the city finance director recommended a budget of 3.7% for us. In working with the mayor, he agreed to essentially split the difference with us between 3.7 and 5.2. And that's how we ended up with a very generous 4.5% increase. And it required the city to place $1.3 million more into our budget, and for us to reduce our expenditures in next year's budget as recommended by 1.3 million, the same amount. And so this reconciliation that I'm going to review with you tonight is designed to do exactly that. This is the 1.3 million that we would be adjusting relative to the amount of money that has now been appropriated by the city council. I also need to point out that the assumption at this point is that our ECS funding would be flat. If it were to go up or down in any way, we would need to go back to the drawing board on this. But by law, you will need to approve a budget in June, our final approval of a budget in June, whether or not the state is ready with its budget at that period of time. And you need to have a reconciled, balanced budget to the best degree possible when you do that. So I want to give you a handout, and there are handouts available to the public that captures the recommendations that we're making here. And I want to point out at the start that we have worked diligently to try to do this in a way that would avoid any layoffs and would avoid any program cuts or program reductions. And I think we've been successful in achieving this in the recommendations I'm going to review with you tonight. Now, you'll see there's 2 pages here. On the first page, we have the recommended adjustments in order of size. And the first one is transportation adjustment of $688,000. Again, some context. Our transportation budget is at $9 million, pushing $10 million. And we are literally, as a school district, due to being buried by this expense. This is almost $10 million in expenditures that is not going to education. It is going to getting students to school. One of the primary drivers for this, as you know, is not having a school in South Norwalk or schools in South Norwalk. But there are other aspects of this that are historic, where if you were to say, we were going to organize a transportation system from scratch today, we would not do those things. And so Tom and I, with the assistance of Joanna Vanacore, our transportation director, we've really gone through this with a fine-tooth comb and come up with what we feel are some creative ways and appropriate ways to make half of the reduction in transportation. If you look at the second page, this is the detail of how it would be done. There are two situations with ECS and RELIA. Those are our special ed transporters. One does in-district and one does out-of-district, where the company has suggested, they have 3-year contracts. If we were to agree to renew for 5 years, that they would give a 0 increase this year. We've been very happy with both of those providers, and we think this is worth doing. Tom, I don't know if you have any other comment on that.
Yeah, actually what the providers have offered is 2 years of 0, so it would be 0% increase in fiscal year 17-18, 0% in 18-19, and then 3% per year in 19-20, 20-21, and 21-22. So basically, in exchange for renewing these contracts and extending these contracts, we would get 2 years of 0s, and certainly that would be very helpful to us at this time. So that's the essential deal with ECS and RELIA that we're putting on the table. So.
Is it safe to assume that we would have, escape clauses in these contracts if there was lack of performance or something, we'd have a remedy?
Sure, that would be,
have
normal
that now?
language in the contract.
Okay.
Those 3% increases are based on variable needs, not.
Yes, because, right, these are not fixed contracts. These are contracts depending on, the number of buses that we need. We pay for in-district service. We're generally paying a fixed rate per bus that we require. And for out-of-district students or students who are being taken outside of Norwalk, it's generally based on the distance that we're traveling required to take the student. So if they're going to New Haven, it's obviously going to be a different charge than if they're going to, Bridgeport or whatever.
So, just speculating, but so in conjunction with potential insourcing of those types of services, we could actually see more downward pressure on those costs?
That certainly is the hope, absolutely. As we bring more students into district, certainly those costs should come down as well.
Thanks.
So our next largest item is the eliminating 2 of the regular education buses. It costs us approximately $80,000, a little more than $80,000 a bus for 180 days. So we pay per day per bus, approximately $80,000 a bus. We have 64 regular type 2 buses. If we eliminate courtesy, the courtesy seat situation, we can save 2 buses. This would require board removal of a section 5D of your transportation policy, 3541. There are not a lot of school districts that do courtesy busing anymore. Courtesy busing is to some degree a misnomer, because to do courtesy busing, you have to put on more buses than you need, have fewer stops in order so that there is a capacity to have the courtesy seats available. If we simply do a regular routing of buses, we can bring a bus up to capacity with fewer stops and the bus will be close to capacity with students who qualify for busing under the policy. And we will not have the courtesy situation available. This is a long-term situation that goes back to an incident that occurred during the Sal Corda days, and it was implemented at that time. And again, this is one of the things that I don't think we would do today if we were simply trying to organize the most efficient transportation system possible. So that's our recommendation in that area. The other recommendations are relatively minor, with the exception of the 81,000 first student that is contingent on a plan to reduce PONUS grade 6 enrollment. Now, this is a situation that we have to address regardless. It just so happens that if we address it, we need one less bus. Many of the chickens are coming home to roost from the situation of not having a building plan for years and not having enrollment projections and all the things that we're now doing to have our school capacity meet the needs of the numbers of students that we have. So Jefferson now, as you know, is over-enrolled. It has the largest fifth grade cohort in the district, over 200 students. That cohort is going to PONUS next year. If they all go, PONUS will over-enroll. PONUS will be 2 classrooms short. And it also messes up and throws off the house structure that PONUS implemented so successfully this year. As you know, at the same time, Rhoton needs students. Rhoton is only at a 2-house level now because it has about 200 less students than the other middle schools. You're also aware that one of the problem at Jefferson is in part created by all the students in South Norwalk, basically that whole area around Columbus School, that are now bused across 95 to Jefferson. And as a result of busing them out of South Norwalk to Jefferson, they become eligible for PONUS. So our proposal here is to make available to families in South Norwalk the option, they would have to choose it, of these are fifth grade families, rising fifth graders to sixth. Make it available to those families the option of choosing Rhoton for their middle school instead of PONUS. That makes sense to us because long-term, once we have an elementary school in where Columbus is now, their feeder will be Rhoton. And so it makes perfect sense to start introducing that now. And if we were to do that, or if we're successful in getting the 50 families, we can reduce one of the type 1 buses as well.
But how would those kids get to school?
They would be picked up by bus, but they're concentrated in one area now, and they're going to Rhoton. So it requires one less bus than to bus them from their homes in South Norwalk to PONUS. The rest of these are relatively minor. You're aware that the CPTV program is not opening until 18-19. The students will have courses in their Norwalk High School next year. But the following year is when the theater and training center is open. So we can defer that. We've also found that at NPA, if we adjust their hours by 30 minutes, we can save $23,000 in busing. So they're open till 4 now. If they were open till 3:30, they can go with the third tier buses, and we can save $23,000 there. The NECA program will be covered by existing elementary activity buses. This is transportation back and forth to Norwalk Community College for the college courses. And then we've been able to fund the transportation required by the new medical academy at Brian McMahon through a small extended through school hours grant, which we have. That all totals $688,000 out of a $9 million plus budget. So it's about a 6 to 7% reduction. But again, all things that we think we can do without really impacting anyone who is eligible for transportation based upon your policy. Let me ask you if you have any questions on this before I move on to the other items.
The item number 2, where it requires board members or removal of section 5D of the policy, would that have to go through the normal process of, because you're asking to have a policy removed, it goes through the public and all that stuff?
Well, I think it's up to you as to what process you use, but removing that section would be necessary if we're going to do this.
Right, that's what I'm looking at, the timeline too as well, because.
Yeah, it would have to go to the policy committee for a normal review.
Right, that's the regular process, that's what, and.
So, I mean, I think,
Public.
to do this, we would need you to enable us to start the school year, at least in September, be able to do that. That's true for the contract extensions also.
And I would add, actually, the Transportation Department, around this time of year, certainly, before the end of school, is working with parents on the courtesy stops. So I think we would need to have some direction from the board so that we can give guidance to parents as well, sooner rather than later. We don't want to wait until September to advise people that there's been a change, anticipated change in policy.
That's what I am.
Yeah, so if you adopt the budget in June with a figure that is $688,000 less than what was originally proposed, then we will take it as your approval, and you're going to move forward in that area, and we can reorient everything during the summer.
Other questions?
The only point I would make is we have a number of schools where we have, the layout is horrendous. We have huge traffic problems. By removing courtesy buses, that means more kids, are going to be driving to school or get driven to school, which means you're going to have bigger traffic problems, more impact on neighborhoods, more pollution, da-da-da-da. I mean, I know in a way that's not our direct problem, but, we've had a lot of complaints about Tracy that have not been addressed. I know Jefferson's crazy.
The
Middle school's crazy. I mean, you should be there at drop off and see what a madhouse it is.
The courtesy passes are actually limited to the high schools and the middle schools, so they don't actually affect the elementary schools, but it does affect the middle schools and the high schools. So
We have also noted, and you may have noticed this yourself if you ever drive by Norwalk High School prior to dismissal, and you see that whole line of buses lined up there. If you were to see students board them, you would notice that there is a large number of students walking down Strawberry Hill and crossing on Route 1 where those crossing machines are. And the buses are about half full when they leave the school. So we just can't, in this environment, we just can't afford that kind of inefficiency. And again, if we don't cut it here, we have to cut personnel and we have to cut programs. So this is why we're recommending this to you.
Question? Marty?
On the CPTV program, $38,000. If that money really wasn't budgeted for 2018, why did we put it in for 2017?
Well, we put it in the budget because we thought they would be open for the next school year.
They're not.
And that was determined after, their delay was determined after the budget was submitted.
And logistically, it wasn't even going to work. We couldn't make it happen for this year, but for next year, we have it slotted to make it happen.
Okay.
Okay, so going, yes.
Go ahead, please.
So going to number 2, again, this is an order of magnitude. I mentioned to you previously that given the degree of uncertainty that we've had in the budget, both state and local funding, that we asked all schools to reserve 1% of their budget and not allocate it in the event it was needed at some point. This proposal would call for 0.3%, or a third of it. They would retain the 2/3 of the 1%. A third of it would go into reconciling the budget, and you can see what the numbers are at each level in order to achieve $243,256.
Okay.
Number three, I think you're aware, I think I've brought to your attention previously that when we opened NECC this year, we added 6 additional paras, right? So the staffing for preschool, as it was in the elementary schools when they were there previously, and as it is at Brookside and our other preschools, is a teacher and a para for 18 students. Okay, so one of the concerns when NECC opened was the need to have this valet pickup and drop-off system because there was not enough space with the senior center there to be parking the cars and walking the children in and all of that. Lynn Toper, who was in charge of this at the time, came up with the valet system. It's actually the same system that's used at Fox Run School. And it's worked exceptionally well, but it required 6 more people in the morning and in the afternoon. Now, those 6 aides were integrated into the classroom, so we've run the school with 2 aides and 2 paras and a teacher in every classroom, right? Now, also, at the time of last year's budget, it was unclear whether NCC would open on time. You probably remember that, right? We were thinking it's probably not going to be open in September. It was, thanks to the great work of our staff and Alan Lowe. But it was a close call. We had thought, maybe September, maybe even October. So we put on this class at Fox Run for the most involved students, the students who attend 2 sessions. That class has been now consolidated. The 4-year-olds have moved into kindergarten. Some of them are part of this EIE cohort, and it'll be the new children who would go to NECC. This is consistent with the correct recommendations that said all of our special needs preschoolers need to be in one place where we can pool the services and have these services available to them more effectively. So what we have said to NECC is given the fact that you're going to be taking a few more students from Fox Run, we'll leave the aides in place. They have become part of the team. They're an integral part. The staff feels that they're needed given all the special needs that they're dealing with and so on. But what we will need to do then, we had the new aides and all the other aides in the budget proposal, but what we are recommending here is that we reduce 6 other paras from throughout the system where we have several hundred in order to compensate for the additional paras at NECC, and that we would then keep our cohort of paraprofessionals the same as it was, so without the addition. And again, I think we're very sensitive in this budget not to be introducing new positions that would create the need to cut other positions. So that's why that recommendation is there. Very easy to do this through attrition, as we have historically an attrition of at least 25 of the paras per year. Also recommending adjustment of 1 AT position, academically talented.
Question?
Yes, question. On the reducing of the 6 paras throughout the school district, and you're saying that it's through attrition, so that means that the ones that are presently in place will not be laid off.
Correct.
And the openings for, let's say, a school needed 2 paraprofessionals, they will not get the 2 if it falls into this. Is there any way of keeping it balanced to where, because let's say that Cranberry needed 2 and Roten needed 1 or so, in order so that they won't be top, where that school, Cranberry, will end up having more para, taken from any other school. Is there something in place that keeps it balanced?
Yeah, so about half of our paras are special ed paras.
Right.
All the special ed paras are assigned based upon a student's IEP. How many hours does the student need of paraprofessional support and for what purpose? So that has to be flexible. And you'll recall, this was another finding in the CREC audit, that this was an area where we needed to improve tremendously because we were not tracking these aides. And a student would move, the aide would still be in the building.
Right.
Or a student would go from elementary to middle school, and the elementary would keep the aide, and the middle school principal was pulling out their hair because they need an aide for the student. So we have this organized now as a result of position control, where we know where everybody is, how they're assigned. There's going to be a flexible adjustment every year of the special education aides. The other aides are, it's a wide variety. Some are interventionists, some are kindergarten aides, some are program aides. But I think we can do this fairly easily without impacting or creating that kind of imbalance that you
Right.
mentioned.
Yeah, I want to make sure that these kids have, if they're or assigned or do a para, that they get that.
Oh, absolutely, and that's we're required to do that by law.
Right.
Okay, so the next one is AT. Now, you're aware that AT has not been one of our most effective programs, and we've called to your attention several times the need for us to redesign this program around a national model. We started that when Lynn Topper left. It was placed on hold. More recently, Michael Connor has been meeting with the AT teachers, and we hope that it will be under the domain of the new chief of specialized learning when that person joins us. However, there are some things that we do know in terms of how these programs are organized and what the staffing ratios are. So, for example, let's take the middle school. The Cadillac model, the absolute Cadillac model, would be for each middle school to have its own AT teacher, okay? Now, that would mean maintaining a staff of 4, which is what we have now, but not having them rotate quarterly by content area, because nobody does content area. That's antithetical to the whole concept of bringing a gift. It's all integrated knowledge, integrated projects. Now, at the elementary level, we have 12 elementary schools, and the program, as established by the board many years ago, calls for 4th and 5th graders to be served. So it's 1 grade less than middle school. Middle school 6, 7, 8, 4, and 5. Because there have not been enough children in a number of cases, our AT teachers have just started serving 3rd graders because there hasn't been enough children. So if you take our 12 elementary schools and you were to assign 4 schools to each AT teacher, that would enable them, regardless of whatever program design is used, to be in each school 1 day a week for 4 days, one day a week, each of their 4 schools. The 5th day could then be used for group activities or to get all the children together, as is characteristic of many gifted programs, for larger group activities and explorations. And we think that's a very adequate funding model for an elementary AT program serving 4th and 5th grade. And so we're recommending that because we feel that optimum staffing is 7 positions as opposed to the 8 positions, which simply was done without having a program to staff against.
So I'm sorry. So that the 3rd graders, that that will be eliminated, and it'll just be 4 and 5, grade 4 and 5.
Right, the 3rd graders are not supposed to be served. No.
Right. So
I mean, again, if you look at the literature and the research, most of it says that you really are not able to identify giftedness until about the 4th grade. It's when the student makes the transition from learning to read to reading to learn, that a separate gifted program becomes becomes more needed more to meet the needs of those students.
Will there be adequate or enough notice given to these parents that have the kids or expect the kids when they get into third?
Well, I think it'll be fairly organic, because the 3rd graders will be 4th graders next year.
Right, but
So,
some,
yeah.
thinking the 2nd graders.
So we
gonna
just
step
won't
into
have them
third.
serving more 3rd graders who are not being served now anyway.
But we're still gonna notify the public, right?
Well, of course we would.
Make
And
sure.
again, this would be done, depending on when you approve this, either late this year or early next year.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
I'm sure people in my district are gonna be asking, if you structured it this way with this 5th day, some schools, I don't know, are all our schools on the same schedule now? They didn't used to be.
Well, the 5th day allows the teacher to do one of several things, depending upon where our program design actually lands. One is that you could go back to a particular school once a month, and you could have activities that involve both the 4th and 5th graders together. There are many programs, though, in the nation that do bring students together from other schools, once a week, once a month, at some frequent level, because one of the tenets is that gifted students need to be around other gifted students, at least part of the time. And so, this gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we can do on that 5th grade after everybody is serviced in the traditional manner. And it also allows, the 4th graders to spend like a half a day with the teachers, the 5th graders to spend a half a day. So again, if you compare to what is done in other districts, that's a relatively generous service model.
And if, with these changes in terms of the service, would the way the students are qualified, would that change? Or
No.
would that stay the same?
No, although that needs to change, but it needs to change as part of the program design. We would use the current identification system, which is very dated. It's very old fashioned. It does not reflect current research on identifying giftedness. However, that's what we'll use for next year. And the program design, when approved by the board, this is something we'd like to take to the curriculum committee first and then to the full board. The program design, I anticipate, will include an updated way of identifying gifted students. Okay, so going further, we will save $83,000 by outsourcing one additional elementary school for custodial services. It appears we'll have 5 vacancies at this point and be able to do that. There was an additional IT tech support position in the budget that we're recommending not be filled. Again, it does not affect any of the current staff. This would have been a new position. And then the city, the city has an outsourced mailroom. We do not. And the city is reopening its contract to bidders to renew that, and has given us the opportunity to go in with them on this so that we can do it together, and that would be the savings to us. Tom, let me ask you, we may have board questions, but let me ask you if you want to comment on anything in those 7 items that I may have left out.
Really, I think just if there's any questions, I mean, I've got more detailed information, but I guess I'd, see what the questions are first.
Any other questions? Shirley?
Yeah, the outsourcing of the mailroom, would that be that person or whoever's handling the thing, will they move to the city side or?
No, they would move, they're in one of our bargaining units, and they would move to other work vacancies. I mentioned 5 vacancies. There's actually 6, so one of those would be reserved for that
Okay,
person.
yeah, because I want to make sure, she said we're not laying anyone off, so I want to make sure that
Correct.
they're
Right.
taken care of as well.
Yeah, we would move that person to another open position in the district. I'd also add on that particular, in that particular case, the total savings to Norwalk taxpayers is actually about $35,000. 21,000 and change is savings in the board budget, but the city will actually realize some savings because this is a position that's in the city pension plan, and so the city makes the contributions to the city pension plan as well as the contributions for workers' compensation for board employees. So some of the savings is in the board budget, some of the savings is in the city budget, but the total savings to Norwalk taxpayers is actually about $35,000.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
Okay, so if we don't hear differently from you, we're going to go ahead and adjust the 17-18 operating budget and make the reconciliation with the amount appropriated by the city council following this outline, and this will be reflected in the budget that you approve at your June meeting. Now, again, it may be necessary for you to revisit the budget in the fall once we know what our state revenue is. But again, you know, your responsibility under law is to approve a budget that balances to the extent you possibly can by the end of June.
Correct. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
One question, Stephen, as far as policy, which we were just discussing, Shirley had mentioned policy 3541. Do we need that back to policy? I think we talked about that, but our next policy meeting, we could do it, but it's beginning of June.
May need a special meeting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's very clear what needs to be done here. I'm not sure you even need a policy committee meeting.
Okay.
I think if the board would just
Well, the
consider
policy wouldn't have to be changed prior to the budget adoption. It would have to be changed prior to September.
correct.
Which will make sure that happens. That's not an issue. Okay.
But you have to have enough notice out there for the public. You have to be able to, that's why I said bring it to the policy meeting, so we can give notification out there, so people will know that something in the policy is going to change.
Which we'll have for our June meeting. We'll add it on for our June meeting, as long as it's done before September, which we would do.
Yeah, the more time you can give us on this, the better, so that we can
Sure.
notify people.
That's what I want
Put
to
it
make
on.
sure,
Yeah.
because the public needs to have, all this information as well.
And it's always posted, so they'll have notice beforehand as well. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, that concludes the workshop
Set.
portion.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is public comments.
We only have one person who has filed, signed up for public comments, and that's Catherine Villanueva from the Sono Community Center. Please introduce yourself, Catherine, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am here tonight as the Chief Operating Officer of the South Norwalk Community Center, Catherine Villanueva, not as Board Watch Volunteer. In front of you, you should have a flyer for our Mother's Day event. It's this Saturday, 7 p.m. It's my first public comment. I'm a little nervous.
It's okay, don't worry about it.
But I'm so excited. I just want to personally invite you. It's a fundraiser for our summer STEM camp this summer. That was redundant. Anyway, we service 80 kids, local community. We need the funding. We need your support. If you can just come by, it's $30 per ticket. It includes the food, entertainment. We're gonna have music, great food, great company. If you can't come, you can still donate and sponsor us. I would really appreciate it. I hope I see you all there. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm a little upset, though, that the public comment was at the end of this meeting because we're kind of empty, but that's a side note.
This question, can you purchase tickets at the door as well?
Yes, you can.
Okay, good, that's.
So I'll see you there. Excellent.
And Catherine, there are people watching live, so.
Oh,
we have-
perfect.
I don't know what our attendance is, Ralph, do we have some watchers?
Oh, well, maybe those 5 will spread the word, and so will you guys. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks a lot. All right. Next item on the agenda is contract negotiations, personnel matters. Chair would entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of that discussion. Ms. Keys moves. Artie seconds. Any discussion?
Nope, let's move.
All in favor, please indicate. All right, we're in executive session. We will take our traditional recess.
Okay.